Good morning, it's me again. Okay, today I'm going to talk about our cars, mostly because there's some pretty funny stories that go with some of the vehicles that we had growing up. Um, I think one of the very first vehicles I knew of, I think it was a Plymouth, the vehicle that my dad used in my early childhood. It was one of those that had the big rounded butt trunk, it's a big rounded trunk. And my dad, we used to go to the drive-in movies a lot when I was a kid. They had double features, and us kids loved the cartoons. The presentation would start off with a newsreel usually that showed some of the news highlights of the day, and then there would be one or two cartoons, and then a first feature, and then they would have, I think probably more newsreel, but they would put up the little thing in between to go to the snack bar, and then they would have more cartoons, and then they would have a second feature. So it was always dual. It was pretty good for the money, and it cost you just a set amount, and I don't know how much that was, but for the vehicle, so it wasn't per person. You could shove as many people in there as you wanted, and you'd all get in for the one low price. So it was, let's say, like $3 or something. And my dad always took fold up chairs and stuff like that, so we could sit outside. But when we were real little, what he would do, and I can't imagine how dangerous this probably was, but back in the day you didn't have seat belts, not in the front seat or the back seat. There was no such thing. So my dad would take out the back seat of the vehicle and put blanket, and then you had access to the trunk. So he would spread the whole back with blankets and stuff and our pillows and everything, and then we had a place to lay down because we were little and we couldn't make it through a double feature, and that gave us room to wiggle around back there and fall asleep. So that's what he would do, and we would drive there. And I can remember smelling the exhaust. So I don't know, but that's what we did. And then they would take the chairs, and maybe this was later when we got too big to do that, or maybe in a different vehicle. I don't, my memory's not that good. But then he would take fold-up chairs, and he would set the chairs out in front of the vehicle, and we would sit out there, and most of the time us kids were just kind of playing because we weren't, you're interested in a movie. These weren't kids' movies. These weren't whole movie of cartoons or anything. These weren't Disney. These were movies. And we lose interest right away because when you're a kid, regular movies aren't that fun. And so we'd be playing around out there in the little rocks that were all over the ground and all that kind of stuff. They also had in front of the movie screen, they would have a playground always in all the places we ever went. They had a playground, and so we'd spend as long as it was still light out, we would spend our time up there playing on the swings and the merry-go-round stuff, and those fun kind of they're not rides, but you know what I mean, swings and those twirl around merry-go-rounds that you'd have to push, and we'd fall off of them and stuff, and it's great fun. And then when the movie started to come on, we'd all run back to our vehicles, and then we'd be sitting out in front on our chairs until we got tired, and then we'd get in the vehicle. But we used to do that, so that's what my dad did with the car to make it more, make it a better vehicle for a family, was to take the back seat out when we were going to do things like go to the movies or maybe go camping. I can't remember on the camping thing, but we used to camp a lot when I was a kid, so it could have been. And then I remember that we got a Nash Rambler. Now, you could look these up online. If I had pictures, I would show you. I'm going to figure out how to do the pictures one of these days, but I might just get some photos and hold up here for you to see. But We got this Nash Rambler, and you should look them up because this had to be one of the ugliest vehicles ever made. And it was a kind of a lime green, a really pale lime green color. And that vehicle I remember driving. So we probably got that when I was preteen or young teen, and still had it when I got to the point where I could drive. I learned to drive in a Carmen Ghia convertible. Our vehicles back then were all stick shift, so we all learned how to drive stick shift. But I think I learned to drive in the Carmen Ghia convertible. Well, my dad owned his own business, and he made crowns and bridges and stuff for your teeth, and so he got into that business when I was pretty young. Before that, I believe he was a lineman for the power company, where he talked about how he strung the lines on the poles on a certain street and stuff. But my uncle was a dental technician who made false things, and he taught my dad, and then my dad started his own business. And so for all my growing up years, we used to go up to the lab and do fun stuff. And anyway, that's another story. But so he had this Volkswagen, little Volkswagen Bug that he used for deliveries of the prosthesis that he would make. And so the whoever was delivering for him used that vehicle. And so I could have learned to drive in that one, but I think I learned to drive in the Carmen Ghia. So those were fun vehicles. But my dad also purchased at some point in time a little Crosley. Now you have to look that one up. Crosley, I believe. It might not have the E, but a Crosley. And they were very small, like I used to call them clown cars, small. And it was like, I don't know why he bought it, but he wanted a pickup, and he had this little Crosley, and he knew how to weld. So he cut the back end of the Crosley off and created a bed, a pickup bed, by welding stuff together, and attached it to the back of the Crosley. So you had the front seat, a small back seat, and then the pickup. And it was not enclosed because when he cut it apart, it took off the top. So you had the windshield, the seats, and then the pickup part. And it was pretty cool. And I don't know what happened to that Crosley. It was there forever at the house. And so I'll have to ask my brother, because Tanner, you'd probably love to get a hold of that little funky little thing. I don't know if it would be street capable, and that probably wouldn't even run now, but it was a funky little thing. If I can find a picture of it, I will. By the way, I have pictures, boxes and boxes of pictures of all you kids when you were little. So don't forget, come at some point and go through pictures. Come with time to spend, because I got tons of them, and you need to go through them and take home pictures that you want. But anyway, so this Crosley, my dad used to do all this decorating, outside decorating around the house. And my mom wanted, well, maybe my dad wanted, my mom liked gardening. And so there were gardens all around. The whole entire house had gardens on all sides. And my dad mowed and edged the lawn, and he wanted an edge on the garden so that the weeds couldn't grow into the garden, which was probably my mother's choice, but it also made it easier to use the edger. So he would make concrete borders around all the gardens. He also created a huge planter box out in front of our house that had walkways on both sides. This is really cool. We ended up having to take it all down after he passed because it had fallen apart, but it was really pretty. My mother loved it. And she was out there all the time going through the garden and weeding and, taking care of it. It was very, very pretty. But at any rate, he had a cement mixer at home, and he would have to go to gravel place and pick up gravel and stuff in order to make his concrete to pour these things. So he fixed this little Crosley so that he could easily bring home this gravel, and all of us, as 3 kids and him, took a drive out. It was in the country at that time. Now it's sort of incorporated more into town, but back then it was a ways out in the country. It was all country, almost clear to there. And he took the Crosley out there and got a pickup bed load of gravel. And when they filled the back of the pickup with gravel, the pickup did this, where the back end just fell down and the front end was up on the 2 wheels, and the front end was up in the air. And so my dad, because he doesn't give up on anything, told us kids to get on the front of the vehicle to level it back out. So my sister sat on one fender, I sat on the other fender, and my brother sat on the hood in front of the windshield. And that brought the front end down, and so he was able to get this load of gravel. And we drove home that way. And I'm telling you, yes, dangerous, but these kind of things made the best memories. For us kids, it was fun. I mean, we thought that was great. We're hanging on he would crawl. He went so slow because it was all back roads. So he took all the untraveled roads to get home. And so, we weren't seen by people until we got right close to our neighborhood. Well, more into town. There was houses there, but somehow we made it without getting in trouble. I don't know how. But us kids were singing on the way home. We were singing, "Hospital, here I come," right back where I started from, and we were laughing. Such a fun memory. But can you imagine, as a parent now, I look back at some of the things we did as children and think, how did my parents do that? And especially my mother. My dad, dads, they don't ever think anything's going to hurt you. But as a mom, how in the heck you didn't say something or stop this kind of, because she wasn't with us, but anyway, we lived through it. It was great. And then at some point in time, my dad bought a Willys Jeep pickup, and sort of like the one we had here, Tanner, but it had a spotlight on the top of the cab for looking around. And that spotlight worked, by the way. And so it didn't have a back seat. It was just the cab and then the bed. And when we'd go camping or anything, we took that vehicle. And so my dad put a wooden bench in the back of the pickup, shoved up against the cab, and us kids could sit on that bench when we traveled. Again, there's no seat belts, and the bench wasn't even attached. It was all loose. But that's how we'd get around town when my dad wanted to use the pickup to go do anything, and us kids wanted to go with him. We would sit in the back on that bench. One time we were coming back from somewhere, and we decided to my mother was in the vehicle at this time. I remember that. We stood up on that bench, and the 3 of us, and held on to that spotlight driving home from somewhere. And it was so much fun and so scary at the same time, because when he'd turn a corner, you felt like you were going to slide off. Don't ask me how they trusted that we would survive that, but we survived that. And it was so much fun, and I don't know, we were weird. We got joy out of weird things, I guess you might say. But that was another one of our vehicles that I don't know what happened to it either. It went away one year. Those weren't our main. Our main vehicle was the Nash Rambler. My dad liked Nash, and then when Nash and Rambler, or he liked Rambler, I don't remember. He liked one of the two, and then when they combined, he bought a Nash Rambler. I think that was our first brand new vehicle, but I won't swear to that. That might be a bad memory, but it kind of seemed like it was. It was like the Griswolds, we got the ugliest, brought it home, and that was our vehicle. It was a station wagon, so us kids would sit in the back of it, and my dad would leave the top, it opened the top up and the bottom down so that you had it when we were sitting still, you'd have a platform there you could actually sit on, but he'd leave the top open, and so then us kids could sit back there and wave out the back and everything, and that's what we did. And my folks like to just, like I told you before, they like to just take a drive one day. We'd go on a Sunday or something and take the Sunday afternoon drive, and generally we would do it kind of in the country, just sightseeing. And I can remember that my mother would have a picnic packed, picnic meal, usually fried chicken and then whatever goes with it. And my dad would pull over on some pretty area where we'll pull out was, and we'd get out and open up the back, and then when you put the back down, it made it like a great table area. My mother would set it all out there, and generally he'd stop by some sort of creek. I think I might have already told you all this, but he'd stop by some sort of creek or something, and us kids would then have, so we could go look for pollywogs and things like that. So it was, the vehicles were quite an adventure in my childhood. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you, trying to keep these not too long, so I'll let it go at that, but I have so much that I want to share with you. I'm hoping you're not finding this boring. But if you're not, come back next time, and I'm hoping I'm going to share some traditions maybe with you, and things that maybe I forgot to share this time. Because like I said, I've got so much. So I will see you then. Love you all. And I'm hoping you'll come and visit me soon. Love you. Bye.